Hello everybody and welcome back to the GeekWave, and of course I am your host Taryn Barker. This is the low budget show. It's the show so low it has no budget. And we are going to be talking about something that is the perfect time to be bringing this back up, because finally the MCU and Kevin Feige himself have announced that the Fantastic Four will be coming to the Marvel Cinematic Universe under the banner of John Waits, who did the first two Spider-Man movies. And I figured it's now more than ever the right time to bring up my love for the characters of the Fantastic Four. So the main crux of this episode is going to be talking about how much I love these characters, why I love them, why I think they are impactful, why I think their stories are so cool, and why I wish Marvel did more of them during certain time periods. We'll touch on the other movies that came out with these characters, but come on. They're amazing. You guys, they're so cool. I hope they get more love, and I only hope that the movie brings them into more positive light. But before that, we do have some pieces of news we are going to be talking about. And before we even get into the news, I would like to bring up that I have a couple of new shows in the works. First off, The Favorite Comics is currently being worked on, and the first episode is out where I talk about Kingdom Come. By the time of this release, the second episode will be well on the way to being released on Monday, where we talk about sex criminals. And of course, starting next week, we will see the release of the Galactic Tales, which will be me talking about the Rocketeer, and it's going to be really fun. I cannot wait to talk about that with you guys. It's going to be a fun show to do. But of course, we do have some pieces of news we are going to be talking about, starting with the Black Adam movie. Has been well in development now for a while. I think we're going to start filming probably next year sometime, I'd imagine. But we got some more casting news. So we had the casting of Hawkman a couple months back. Now we got casting for Cyclone. And they talked about Cyclone being a character they were going to introduce instead of Hawkgirl, because it opened up the door for more possible like storylines or something. Whatever they said. It sounds cool. But Quintessa Swimdell. Now, I don't really know who this actress is or what she's worked on, but she has been cast as Cyclone. More of a younger actress, which makes me think that she's going to be a second-generation JSA member. I think that's pretty cool. I like so far we haven't really got any Caucasian people in the cast. I think that's very exciting. That's going to make for this... I think it actually kind of works, because we're going to be in like a Middle Eastern country for most part of Kahndaq, so I think that could be really cool to see. I think she is going to be, like I said, like a next generation JSA member and be like a younger part of the team. That could be really exciting to see how that's going to play up. I think it could be really fun. I'm actually very curious to see how that's going to go down. I like that we're doing this. Cyclone's a pretty fascinating character. I cannot wait to see what this actress does, because I don't know her in much work. So good for her. Congratulations on getting the role. I think it's going to be really fun. Now here's something that's kind of exciting if you're interested in that kind of stuff. Chris Pine has been tapped to be the lead in the reboot of a Dungeons & Dragons movie. Now this is stupid, considering that Joe Manganiello is like currently not Deathstroke, and he just made a movie where he's like a low budget superhero. Tell me you shouldn't just get him to do this, because the guy is a big D&D fan, and that would be really cool. I love Chris Pine. He's my favorite Chris in Hollywood. I think he's the best one out of all of them. I think he's adorable. I would love to see him in this nonetheless, but I'm just like, really? Joe Manganiello is like right there. Just get him to do this, because he would like literally kill for this opportunity, because he can't beat Geralt of Rivia or whatever The Witcher is doing. Like that would have been cool to me. That would have been so fun to see that story, but hey, I can live with this. It's not like a big deal to me that Chris Pine will be in this movie. I had the idea a long time ago, in an earlier like episode of like stuff I've talked about on this channel, like if you were to make a Dungeons and Dragons TV series, I say you base it on a new character each time, and you have it like, oh, like the actual like narrative is based on characters that were created by the writers and not just like pre-existing ones in the lore. So each time you do a different story, you have like a character that's made, like maybe one of the writers. Let's say Joe Manganiello was writing this. Maybe like the character he plays as in his game. I think he's a dungeon master though, if I remember correctly. But maybe like the character he's played as before, that could be who is like written into the show. That could be a really fun thing to see. Very different, and I think it'd be really fun. If you want to like get that Game of Thrones feel, Dungeons and Dragons is the perfect place to go. I'm very excited to see what this could be. I think it could be really interesting. And in some news that will surprise no one, the cancellation of Hellstrom on Hulu was announced. Like, I think we all saw this coming. It's like the last like flagship title of like the Jeff Loeb era of like actually creating stuff for television, and nobody Nobody was shocked by this. Did anybody watch this? They dumped it on Hulu because they kind of had to just be like, yeah, we're making it. It's out now. Not a surprise. I think it's kind of, who cares? Honestly, did anybody watch it? I don't think anybody watched it. And why should they? They have no right to. Now we can get Damien Hellstrom in his proper form later on down the line in an MCU movie. Preferably something with Midnight Suns. That could be really fun to see. But hey, I guess I'm sad for the people involved in this. If they had a real story to tell, that sucks, but they didn't. They didn't. I know they didn't. They didn't. They just made this because, it was like a pissing match over at Marvel Studios and Marvel TV for the longest time. And now it's like that it's over. Who gives a shit? It's just stuff that happened. We can all move past it now. Let's forget about it and move on with our lives. Like, literally, let's get past it. We're not going to see any of this shit, so it's fine. It's legitimately fine. And some interesting news that we're going to end on. We got a couple of pieces here. I kind of morphed them together because they're both in conjunction. Is that a real word? Probably. They're both semi-related to stuff happening at Disney+. First off, Dinosaurs will be coming to Disney+ January 29th. And now, if you guys don't know, I am a huge fan of dinosaurs, so much so that I've been thinking maybe I should do a dinosaurs podcast on this channel because I'd love to talk about that show and just the weird, zany world that it built. It's amazing to me. Disney+, if you are listening, I've been sitting on a Dinosaurs reboot pitch for so long. That's just make it Family Guy. Because cartoons are cool, and if you just cartoonize those characters up, you can have a lot more fun with them, and get the same voice actors. Works for me. Could be really fun. Really fun. Actually, amazing. It could be great. I love it so much. That was like, I had to talk about that, even if just for a quick second. But the big news is that Hilary Duff has kind of revealed on her, was it Instagram or something, that the Lizzie Maguire reboot will not be moving forward at Disney Plus or Hulu or any of those places. Really, really saddening. I know they lost their showrunner a few months ago, and I know they've been working on it because they released that picture of her with the actor that plays Gordo on the show. So you're like, oh, they're working on it. I want to see this. Come on, make it, please. I love Lizzie Maguire. I love Hilary Duff. I think she's a talent on and off screen. Everything she does is very cool, very exciting. I like her. I really do like her. I wish this went through. I'm trying to think of like what could it have been. I'm going to assume it's creative differences because, like I said, they did lose their showrunner and they kind of put it on hiatus because of COVID, and they haven't really filmed it since then. But I'm also thinking, what else could it have been? Because, okay, here's the thing. Hilary Duff was dead certain on saying, like, this is going to be mature. A woman in her 30s is not having a PG or G-rated life. She is going to be doing things that are a little more mature. Now, I know that they announced, like, that Star Plus thing for Disney, that they're going to be putting their more mature content on. I wonder, though, if she was like a little too mature and too edgy for Disney at the time before that, and they were wondering, well, we can't actually do this. Like, maybe I'm going to say it's creative differences, of course, because that's what you have to say, but my mind goes like, oh, you can't be talking about sex this openly on Disney. That's weird. You can't be talking about like failed marriages this openly on Disney. That's weird. You can't be talking about being a single mother this openly on Disney in a mature setting. Look at Raven's Home. Raven's Home is about single mothers raising their kids, but there's like a level of like sitcomness to it. I don't think Hilary Duff wanted to go down that route. If anything, I'd imagine she wanted to be like, this is going to be realistic and dramatic and serious. You're going to watch this and understand what it's like to be a woman in her 30s, living on her own, potentially having a son or a daughter, and like the craziness of her life in that regard. And maybe Disney was scared that was going to be too realistic and be too dramatic for some people, and not like a true to form like Hilary Duff / Lizzie Maguire like reboot where it's like, look how weird we are. Here's the weird like animated girl coming in, appearing every now and then. I don't know. We don't really know. And it kind of sucks. They did lose their showrunner, which sucks even more. I wish this kept going because Hilary Duff really should have a project like this in development because I love her. But if anything, this might lead me to believe maybe to make her happy, they'll pay her millions of dollars to appear in a different show. Now, maybe I will do like a mini episode talking about what I'd like to see Hilary Duff work on for a big franchise. But if I had to say anything, here's some stuff I'd like to see her in. Put her in a Mandalorian episode. That would be cool. Make her Marlene Arlen in the Moon Knight series. That'd be cool. put her in, let's say, a princess thing, doing something. That'd be cool. Maybe Disenchanted. That'd be fun. Maybe make her Gadget in the Chippendale Rescue Rangers. But I'd like to see more from her. I would. I love her so much. So I think it's really sad we're not going to be seeing this Lizzie Maguire reboot. I wish we did, but I understand why, and it's just something we have to live with. So that is all the news for this week. Let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we will be talking about the first family of comics. So, like I said at the beginning of the episode, we got confirmation, like an official confirmation from Kevin Feige himself, that the Fantastic Four are currently in development at the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Just what they do there. They're making it. It's a thing that's coming. We're going to see it in our lifetime. An actual Fantastic Four movie set in a larger Marvel universe. Now, this really excited me for a few reasons. Well, first off, I love the Fantastic Four. That's why I'm doing this episode. And I feel like finally we are going to see a version of the Fantastic Four that's going to be given the respect it deserves. Now, I don't mean that as like a criticism to any of the other movies, because I don't actually think any of them are that bad. I think they are a lot like Man of Steel or like the Suicide Squad or any of those early DC movies, that they're just, they look good, but they miss the point of the characters. I honestly think that. And it's kind of exciting that John Watts, the guy who kind of made Spider-Man cool for a whole generation, is going to be working on the first family of Marvel. And we could probably spend some time talking about like the things I want to see in that movie. And I guess we could do that for a little bit here. Like, I know right away they're going to be setting up like a larger game with these characters. So we're not going to see some of like the main things right away. Like, I don't imagine we're going to get the Silver Surfer and Galactus right away. I don't even imagine we'll get Doctor Doom as the main villain right away. If you want my honest opinion, you don't use Doctor Doom as the villain at all. You just make him a supporting character in every single movie. That's where he should be, and that's what he should be. You want a main villain, you should use the Mole Man. You should use Puppet Master. You should use Diablo. You should use Red Ghost. And not like these big-name villains, but smaller ones that are easy to use to get your audience to care about your characters. And I've said it before, and when we'll get into like why I like these characters in a bit, you should have Valeria and Franklin. They are really cool characters. Actually, they're awesome. They are so underutilized in a lot of stuff in Marvel Comics that it actually upsets me they don't have a bigger role in the universe, because Franklin and Valeria are really cool and they're really fun. So really, I want to see them in this universe and in the MCU at some point. Are they going to be, I don't know how old they'd be. I'd imagine they'd start off as kids and we see them grow up, because that'd be pretty fun, but I really don't know. And honestly, that's the kind of thing that excites me about this, that we don't really know what the Fantastic Four is going to look like coming to the MCU. It could be a bunch of things. One of the key items, in my opinion, that they should really focus on, though, is the age, because I don't want to see them under 30. I really think that is a bad idea. They should be old. Now, in a realistic world, in a world that would satisfy me, they would be older than Tony Stark was. And I think they said near the end of his career, Tony Stark was over 50. I think that's what we were saying. Because I think he was born in the 70s, is what they said. I can't remember. But realistically, and honestly, I wish they would be like 50 to like 55 in that range. But they're not going to be. That's unrealistic for a franchise going forward to starve people at that age. And especially in the Marvel Universe. If John Wick's a different story. But this is like, okay, they're not going to be that old. I'd at least like them to be in their like early 40s. Just because I don't want them to be like 26. I don't like that. There should be a huge gap between Reed Richards and Peter Parker in terms of age. I'd say at least 15 years. That's important to me. But if you want to make one younger, Johnny could be the younger one. And I think that would work for a lot of people too. I don't want him to be in high school, but he could be maybe like 8 years older than Peter. That would work for me. If Peter's 20, Johnny could be 28. Still young enough to know each other's like world pretty well. I think that'd be interesting to see. So yeah, I love the Fantastic Four. I have been clamoring to see them on the big screen again in a really cool way. But at the same time, I was really excited when they finally announced that Dan Slott was going to be taking over the book, because we needed them back in the forefront. There was a long time there where Marvel kind of pushed the family to the side, And it really made me upset because these characters, love them or hate them, and this is the thing that not a lot of like the young people or like the mainstream people really understand the importance of the Fantastic Four. So I'm going to lay it out to you guys right here. The Fantastic Four are so important to the history of the Marvel Universe, to the history of comic books, and literally to the history of storytelling going forward from that point. Without Stan Lee and Jack Kirby's like bold statement on that book in the 60s, you don't have modern pop culture as it is today. You really don't. Up until that point, and it's a very fascinating thing you guys can research. You had your pulpy, you had like a mix of like your pulpy swashbuckling hero types. You had your Robin Hoods of like Errol Flynn being like a big thing that people enjoyed. You had your dark detective stories. You had your kind of Buck Rogers feel. And even at DC Comics, they really weren't like pushing the forefront of like this mature audience. And I say mature loosely. It's very adult the way Fantastic Four presented itself. At the same time, it wasn't like this super over-the-top mature book. And at the time, even in like the 50s, DC was like slowly breaking through to these things. Things like Barry Allen were becoming prominent. Things like Hal Jordan. But in that time, there wasn't really this like push like, oh, these could actually tell a significant story about real people, about like actual emotional beats of a person that they would experience, and the idea that you can like have infighting in a superhero team and all that stuff. So when Stan Lee and Jack Kirby boldly made that first issue, it changed the world. It changed the comic book world for the better in a way that you can see presented in every single piece of medium going forward. First off, you are introducing a lot of things. You're introducing a family of superheroes. It's not a concept that's new, but it's one that's like, hey, these are real people. These could be the people in your backyard. Like, they grow up on Yancey Street. They're from New York. They have all these prominent parts of their lives. And they also, their powers aren't really like to benefit them. Which is like, that's like the big deal that like was really about Marvel in this time. And it started with the Fantastic Four. You look at it this way. How would you feel if suddenly you were a giant rock monster and this horrific creature that nobody really saw you as a human anymore? Or like every time you got anxious or shy, you would turn invisible. You were just so engrossed in everything going on. You're wrapped around in your own body, or you're just so angry and fumed up and just mad at the world that you literally burst into flame. That is what that story presented. It presented us a modern idea of what a superhero could be. They have problems. Like Ben and Johnny are always fighting. Reed and Sue have relationship problems. You know, how does Reed feel that he can never really fix his friend Benjamin Grimm? Like, those are the problems that these people are dealing with while still being superheroes. It's why Marvel is so popular today. It all starts with the Fantastic Four. Everything you love about the MCU. If you're watching this and you saw the thumbnail because it's like the Michael Chiklis movie version of the thing, and you saw this and you're like, man, I think this is going to be about like why they should be cool in the MCU. I'm telling you right now, you don't get Spider-Man Homecoming, you don't get Downey's Iron Man, you don't get even like Reeves' Superman, you don't get any of those beats until you start in this moment in the 60s when these characters are created. They changed the game of comic books. Everything after that was an imitation to get there. Whether it be X-Men or Hulk or Spider-Man, it all started because Fantastic Four was so cool and popular. And that original run from Lee and Kirby is phenomenally interesting and talented. It goes to a bunch of routes that I don't think a lot of people really understand. Not only did it give us some of the most important and interesting characters in comic books, it gave us some of the most prominent villains in comic books, and it gave us Black Panther, which is something that I think is very understated when it comes to the comic book realm. Black Panther debuted in Fantastic Four. That is really cool. It gave us Silver Surfer, one of my favorite Shakespearean characters in the mythos of the Marvel Universe. It gave us the Inhumans. It gave us Galactus. It gave us Doctor Doom, the single best villain in all of comic books. And it started with this family. And they were a family from the get-go. And that's something that's very important to their relationship going forward. And I will say, there's been hits and misses throughout the entire history of the Fantastic Four. Of course, there has. Not every single run has been great. Sometimes you have different people come on to write it. You have different people come on the team. But overall, I think they have a lasting legacy that's very unseen before in comic books. Like, they really just set everything in motion going forward. And they are very cool because of it. I do think, because we live in this weird age where everything's really modern up and Iron Man was the big winner, we have this sense of like the future is where we should be looking. But honestly, The Fantastic Four are very steeped in the past, not only in like the mythos of Marvel Comics, but even in their own world. They have a very like old school science fiction feel to them, where you could watch like a really campy movie version of these characters and it would make sense to me. I really like that feel about them. And there's something really cool about that longevity, that they can be in a lot of iterations and still matter. Like, these characters are just so fun to read about. They're just so interesting. They can go to any facet of the Marvel Universe. You can go to space. You can go to different dimensions. You can do street level stuff. You could just have all these different types of stories and these personal endeavors with each and every one of them. And I think it's really cool. And come on, they had like the first major wedding in comic books with Reed and Sue. That was really cool. That's like a big deal for Marvel to have, like, we're actually going to let these characters get married and stay married. That is really awesome. They've been married ever since. I think that is incredible. It's not something you see that often in comic books, that characters actually stay married. It's cool because that's the importance. They are the first husband and wife of the Marvel Universe. They are Stan Lee and Joan Lee. That is who they are, literally to a T. It's amazing to think about that, isn't it? It's just so powerful that these characters have lasted this long. And they have been pushed aside a bit because of the stuff with Fox, the same as X-Men has before, and that's more in like the modern stuff, but they've been pretty consistent since the 60s and 70s and 80s. The 90s was a weird time, but the 90s was a weird time for everyone, and then Hickman did his big thing with the story, and it was cool, and then they kind of like faded into obscurity a little bit. There was a run in between that, but it's like, that's the interdimensional politics of the studio, so that's just what that is. That's why there was an absent in a lot of people's mind during the MCU times, which really sucked. It really did suck that we sat in a world where the first family was pushed to the sidelines in favor of these characters. I'll say it right now. I like every member of the Fantastic Four more than I like any member of the Marvel Cinematic Universe Avengers team. And I'm a diehard Hawkeye guy. But that Hawkeye in the MCU sucks. So it's just amazing to me that we're finally in this time in our lives where it's cool to be a Fantastic Four fan again. For a long time, it was always just like that team that you're just like, oh, you mean those campy guys with like the weird stretchy powers? But no, like, they're really cool. They're really cool. And I think you see that a lot in like the actual writers and creators that work at Marvel Comics, because those people, they understand the reverence that these characters should have in the universe and will try their damnedest to put them in everything they can. That's why some of the best current books have these characters in them and are very important stuff. I think it's really cool. I honestly think it's amazing. So let's take a moment here, and I'm going to talk about some of the reasons I like the individual characters, not just the Fantastic Four themselves, but why do I like their kids, why do I like some of their villains, why do I like some of their side characters, and then we'll come back and we will talk about the movies and how I feel about those movies. I just want everybody to note, these characters are cool. I might give you a few reasons why I like them, but I really encourage you guys to take a minute and read some Fantastic Four comic books, because there's something really timeless about them that you only get in books like Spider-Man, and they have that kind of longevity and feel to them, so I really do recommend it. So, like I said there, I love the Fantastic Four. I like these characters a lot more than the on-screen Avengers, and I like the comic version of some of those characters. I've always liked Tony Stark. There's a place in my heart for Tony Stark. I kind of like Janet Van Dyne. I know she wasn't in like the Avengers movie, but I like her. But you know who the best genius in all of comic books is? It's Reed Richards. For one reason alone, and that is that he is the perfect example of how a psychotic genius would work. He's very meticulous, very in his own world. He's wrapped around in all these different ideas that he's literally just focused on one thing so like severely at a time that it like loses focus on everything else in his life. And I think that's really cool. Reed is not this guy that you despise or you dislike, but he's not someone you'd be like, oh yeah, I can't wait to have him at the party. Reed is just this guy who's so intelligent and observant and probably a little OCD in some regards too, that he just focuses on everything for a little too much and it becomes a problem. He's built some incredible technology. He's worked with some really cool angles and that kind of stuff. And I think Reed is a great example of how to tell a really neurotic kind of character, because you could really see Reed without the help. We'll get to this in a second here, actually. Without the help of his wife, Reed would probably be lost in his own mind and he'd never really come out of his cave. And I like that idea a lot too, because it shows you the importance of a marriage and like a relationship. I think that's a cool angle to play. I also like it too because Reed, if he didn't have Sue, and we'll just get into Sue here right now. If Reed didn't have Sue, he would probably lose his mind and get so ingrained in his work that he would never come out and just probably die. Or just like, he wouldn't be able to escape that part of his mind. And I think there's something really fascinating about that character. I like it too, that he cares about his family. He wants to do the right thing by them, and that's kind of why they are celebrities in like the world now, because he's like, if you're going to be these people, I want the world to respect you. So Reed's kind of the one that puts them into the forefront of that, and I think that's a really cool angle to have for him. In more contemporary storytelling, Reed's become a little more interesting, in my opinion. They've given him a little more to do. He's become a little more like the nerdy science guy than he is like the, wrapped up in his own mind. He's not really to talk about that. So that's kind of fun to see. I really like that, actually. It's cool to see Reed have that dichotomy where he can become this different type of character. But I do think if you take Reed away from the Fantastic Four itself, he doesn't work. Now, I think some of the other characters might work without the Fantastic Four, but Reed's one that doesn't. And as I was saying, without the help of his beloved wife, Reed would get lost in his own work. That is why, one of those reasons is why Susan Storm Richards is my favorite female character in comic books. I absolutely, without a doubt, think Susan Storm should be the template to how to tell a female character in comic books. Because in the time of like the 60s and 50s, women didn't have that big of a role in comic books. They just didn't. Wonder Woman was kind of the exception. But that came from a place of like bondage and being tied up and everything, and it was just kind of a weird angle where that spewed out from. Sue started off as being like obviously the girlfriend to Reed, but she span out into being the most powerful member of the team. Once you give her the chance to like use her powers to their fullest and write them at their fullest power, Susan can become an actual threat and an actual terrifying character. And I love the fact that she's just so humbled and pleasant about everything in the world. She's just so sincere and sweet. She is the mother figure of the Marvel Universe. She is the first woman to become this prominent character. And I think that is so cool, because you don't really see that like motherly nature be presented in a way that's also this very powerful thing. We've seen it before with things like Ripley, but this was before Ripley happened in Aliens, right? This is a woman who is like, hey, I'm going to slap my little brother around if he gets out of line. I'm going to tell Ben Grimm, calm down, don't do this. And she's going to stop her husband from getting too far into his own world. And she's okay with that. Sure, there's been stories where she's been written as like this kind of like more like saddened character. But of course, like you have that long history, something's bound to happen in that regard. I just love Susan. She is just so pleasant to like write about. Like if I was ever to write a story about the Fantastic Four, Susan Storm would be to me the heart of the team, just because she'd be the one that keeps everyone together. And even in later stories, she is a lot like that too. She has come a long way in just terms of being that woman from the 60s, and I think it's incredible to see her evolution as a character. Like I said too, her power level is pretty much unknown. She can do a lot of weird shit that's more than just force fields and turning invisible. We've seen recently that she can literally change the way her skin looks or the way her hair is colored. That's a pretty cool power. Who knows how big of a force field she could really build if given all the time in the world to do so. I really like Susan. She's just such a nice motherly figure that you didn't really see in comic books at the time. And I enjoy her a lot. I think it is a great relationship to have her be like the wife of a guy like that, because you see, oh, here's a positive example of a husband and wife in comic books. Even if the husband's like, oh, a little bit out of the realm of normality and he's doing a little bit like wrapped up in his own world, and it's not really like the, oh, he's just watching sports on the couch kind of wrapped up in his own world. It's more like the, I'm building a device that could literally end the world kind of wrapped up. She's still supportive of him, and she still loves him, and he loves her because of it too, and I think that's really cool. I also think it's a great representation of the older sister, younger brother relationship, because I think out of any member of the Fantastic Four, he's not my favorite, but Johnny Storm has a lot of similarities to how I view myself as a person. I'd say I'm a hothead. I've been very good lately where I haven't like lost my temper and a lot of stuff, but I can get mad very easily. And I also have an older sister, so I know the importance of that relationship in the real world. And I think it's really cool to see that. Johnny, to me, like in the 60s when he first debuted, he was that, like the rebel James Dean type. He's like, I don't need to listen to you. I'm going to be fun and do my own thing. But Johnny is a great example of letting a character evolve. A lot like Peter Parker, actually, but in a different way. Johnny's story is the kid who was just loud and mean and just a hothead and angry all the time, evolving into, I'm actually going to be a good person. I think that's really cool. And come on, how cool is it that Johnny could just literally fly because he's on fire? That shit is awesome. What a cool thing to see. I absolutely enjoy Johnny. Like, just having that character really makes me happy. He's just somebody who's so unique and onto himself. And I think out of anybody in the Fantastic Four universe itself, he could probably like go into different places and do different things. We've seen him get with a lot of different women, which of course you are. You're a young promiscuous man. You're going to meet a lot of different women along your travels. But he always comes back to the team, and I really like that. There's kind of like that it's a weird comparison because he came out way before this. But there's kind of like that Bart Simpson energy to Johnny Storm, where it's like you can be like the rebel, you're going to shoot your slingshot and hit Principal Skinner and all that, but at the end of the day you're still a young man who wants to be loved and he wants to be respected, and you're always going to come back to that feeling. I like having that around. Again, I kind of like the idea that the motherly figure to Johnny is his sister. I think that's kind of cool to see. And I like that as the youngest member of the team, he's kind of trying to fill out those shoes and find the right place for himself. And I think in contemporary storytelling, you see like the way that ends up for that character is really cool and compelling. Johnny is a great example if you want to do the Peter Parker story, but you don't want to have like the nerdy kid who loses everything. If you want to have like, hey, you're a little out of your element here, you need to smarten up and grow up, Johnny Storm is a great place for that. He's more of the everyman in the universe than I think a lot of the other characters are, and that's important to me too, because Johnny could be your point of view character easily, and I really do like him. Especially like that brash, arrogant swagger that we see later on. I think it's really cool to see how he just matured as a man and as a character. And look at the three we've talked about so far. We got such a diverse cast here, and it's not even that diverse because they're all family. You got the husband who's wrapped up in his own world, can't really focus on anything, very like narcissistic and just focus on all these little things. You got the motherly figure who's keeping everybody together and in check, trying to like, hey, we're a family, let's act like a family. And you got the young hothead who keeps trying to prove himself, and maybe when he does, he'll finally be able to grow up and out of the shadow of his own family. I think that's really cool. And of course, we got the blue-eyed, ever-loving Thing. Now, Ben Grimm is such a good character, just in concept alone. Like the monster, he's like the Hulk, but essentially he's the Hulk that can't change back into his normal self and like the self he wants to be for everyone. I really love everything they've done with the Thing. Like, this character to me was the one when I was a kid. I'm like, this guy is awesome. I love him so much. First off, having that thick accent, like the "you guys is our," that to me is really good for his character, because it's like, yeah, he's just a big, bulky, like, sweetheart. You just love him to death. You just want to give him a hug and just be like, everything's okay. He's kind of like the outside figure to the family because he's pretty much just Reed's friend at that time. And just having him come in here, he just brings another level of joy to the place. And I love that we've seen stories where it's both like, I'm trapped as this monster and I am very unhappy in my own body. I will never be okay in this world ever again. And we've also seen stories that are like, hey, you got to make do with what you got, and I have a loving woman who loves me more than anything. And that's cool. That's why Alicia Masters to me is a great character for Ben Grimm to have. I am so happy that they finally allowed them to get married. I think that's really cool. I seriously enjoy that aspect of their characters. Like, Ben Grimm, it's amazing that you can take that character and make him as happy as he is, and it works. I think it's really cool. It's really exciting. And he's got such a unique look, even compared to the Hulk. I like the Hulk. I do. The Hulk's just like a beefy guy, and he's green. But the thing is, like, there's jaded rocks. He's got like a thick unibrow over his head. He looks amazing, and he's just so cool to see. I absolutely love that character. And I really, I don't know. I just really enjoy these characters so much, and being a part of this world, it just always brings me joy to see them, you know? I think that's something we should explore more in some storytelling. And I wish these characters were making billions of dollars in their movies. I wish they didn't have to suffer the way they have at Fox for a long time, because I want to see them succeed. I really like them a lot. That's why I'm very excited to see them make their appearance in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It's also why I want to encourage younger people. If you are reading comic books, and say you want to get into comics, okay? Because I know a lot of people want to find the right way to get into comic books, and sometimes it's hard to find the right balance of where to start and where to end off. You want to be like, oh, well, I like Iron Man, I'd like to read Iron Man. I implore you, read some Fantastic Four. it's going to make you happy. You're going to smile. You're going to have a big, goofy, dopey face on, and you're going to enjoy these characters a lot. Like, I really don't have anything bad to say about them. There's been some weird periods with the characters, of course, but you're still going to get enjoyment out of them, and they're still worth your time because they are the first family. They set everything in motion, and they've been consistently interesting for years. And I'm glad we're finally going to see them have their heyday, and I hope that means the comic will get more people reading it. I really do. So aside from those people, of course, we have Franklin and Valeria, the two kids of Reed and Sue. They're awesome. Like, Franklin, to me, is such a complex and interesting character. He's essentially a god-level threat sometimes, depending on who's writing him, and that's such a cool concept, just to have, like, yeah, the smartest man in the world and the most powerful woman in the world, their son is a dangerous guy and very threatening. I like that he's a mutant. That's kind of cool to see. And I also like that Valeria herself has no distinguishable power like her parents do, but she has the intellect that could rival her own father. That is fucking awesome. I love those characters. They're just so fun to see and so unique. And you know who else is good? Victor Von Doom. I won't spend a lot of time on Victor Von Doom because we could probably do a whole episode on him himself. But man, just having the idea of that character is so good. He's so fascinating. Like, the obsession with wanting to be better than Reed, the obsession with wanting to have Susan, all that stuff, it plays perfectly into his narrative of being this guy who's not really a villain. He's just more like, I'm going to make my country better. I'm going to make my people's lives better. And if that means I have to rule the world to do it, well, that means I have to rule the world. I think that's such a cool and interesting concept for a villain. He's got such a distinct and powerful look. I honestly think it's really good shit. It's really good shit, and I want people to read more about him. There's a great book going on right now, Dr. Doom by Christopher Cantwell. Everyone should read it. It's worth your time. Trust me. And then, of course, there are some characters who also appear in the story that I think are very cool. The Inhumans, they're fine. I think a lot of people are kind of salted on the Inhumans right now, but there's a lot of good shit with the Inhumans. Black Panther appeared in the Fantastic Four books, and they're really cool. But the one I want to really touch on the most is kind of Silver Surfer, just because just the same way I love, like, Susan Storm and Johnny Storm, Silver Surfer is a character I absolutely adore. I think this is where, if you're ever going to do a character in the Marvel Universe, this cosmic surfer who goes across the galaxy, scouting these different planets and observing life, is where you should get very, very philosophical. You should get very metatextual. You should get very weird and Shakespearean in the dialogue. And that's what comes across in this. There's such a very thespian way about this character that's so over the top and dramatic when he's written in those earlier days that you're just like, this is really cool to see. He's so unique unto himself, and there's nothing quite like him in the world. I think it's really cool. I love it because the Silver Surfer, he's come a long way too. Just like the Fantastic Four have. He's been through enough where he can hold his own, and he has, and that's been very exciting to see. I love the Surfer. I love them all. I love everything about these characters. They're all so cool. I really like the relationship between Susan and Namor the Submariner. I think that is one of my favorite storylines. Actually, one of my favorite ideas of a love triangle in modern Marvel comic books. For the reason of, like, it's literally the story of brain versus brawn. Like, Namor's not the smartest guy, but he is definitely stronger, more physically fit than Reed Richards. And I love that. Obviously, Sue is always going to stay with her husband, but I love the idea that there's this thread. It's like, yeah, I will do anything in my power to make sure Reed does not end up with her, and I love that idea so much. Isn't it kind of cool that this powerful motherly figure is wanted and desired by a lot of the most powerful men in the Marvel Universe? That's pretty cool. That's awesome. That's really fun. I really enjoy that aspect of things too. Like, come on, Susan is just the best. I love Sue Storm. I do. I would love to have her in my life. Just that kind of figure. It's like telling me, like, just stop. I guess you could say the relationship between me and my sister is similar to Johnny and Sue. So that's kind of fun. That's something. There's something about my personal life, guys. Do something with that as you will. So let's talk a little bit about the movies that have previously come out with these characters. And there's not a lot I can say. I don't think they're all terrible. Like, there's one I think that's really egregious, and we'll get to that at the end because it's the most recent one. But I have seen the 94 movie that never really actually technically came out. I think it's okay. It's like a schlucky comedy kind of, classic film. It's fine. I don't think it's terrible. There's a great documentary on it called Doomed that I think a lot of people should watch if you're interested in seeing the legacy of that Roger Corman film. It's just so bizarre, and you're going to get some really weird stuff. It's the best looking thing It might be the best looking thing. I will stand by that. I don't care. I will stand by that. It is just one. I definitely see myself covering it the closer we get to the Fantastic Four movie. But it's different. You're going to get like some weird experiences when you watch that movie, man. And then you get to the two more modern ones where you got like your Jessica Albas and your stuff. And those, I think, are the closest we got to like an actual Fantastic Four movie. They pretty much nailed the campy nature of it. Like I think they got the right casting for everyone pretty much, but they missed like the heart and the soul of the team, which is like, we're a family, we're close, we're gonna fight and do this weird stuff. They got some of it right. They tried way too hard to sexualize Susan Storm, which is no. There should be nothing sexualized about that character. She's a motherly figure, and that's all she should be. You don't sexualize Susan Storm. I think they really got the character of Johnny right, and they really got the character of Ben Grimm right. The other ones, yeah, they're fine, but I really like the way those two presented themselves. Pretty interesting stuff. The Rise of the Silver Surfer, that was a really bizarre movie. It just went to a lot of, like, weird places. You could tell nobody was really into it, except maybe Chris Evans, but who really cares? He was just doing his thing there. Like, they were fine. They were just okay. I don't think they were bad in any regards. I don't think they really understood what Doctor Doom was or made him that interesting. Silver Surfer in there was fine. But I think now in today's storytelling, we could make that kind of like schlucky Ant-Man and the Wasp feeling kind of movie with these characters, and a lot of people would enjoy it. I also think the 2015 movie was literally just a write-off from Fox to be like, we're going to keep this so Marvel can't have it. Maybe we'll do something good with it eventually, but we cast way too young, we cast way too stupidly, we told a way too bad story, we couldn't let Kate Mara have her wig on the right way. And it's just a disgrace to see. That's the legacy of these characters that I've adored for so long. Just being pushed to the sidelines in just like some stupid political studio interference bullshit. Absolutely annoying. And I'm so upset that that happened. I really am. And that sucks. But the future is looking bright. The future is looking really bright for these characters, and maybe finally they will get their time in the sunlight and the spotlight to be the characters that I know them to be, and lots of comic book writers and creators and fans know them to be. Are the fans smaller than they've been before? Absolutely. I don't know if there are hundreds of thousands of fans of the Fantastic Four who read the comic books every week, or every month, I should say, but there are those of us who still stand by it and love the book nonetheless. These characters will always have a place of timeless nature in the MCU and in the Marvel Universe, and they're going to be some of the most longest-lasting characters in that universe. They are very important to the overall narrative of Marvel, and you don't have any of the things you love in the world because of it. They gave us everything, okay? They are the most important things in comic books, in my opinion, aside from the creation of Superman. I love them. I have nothing but respect for the Fantastic Four. I want more people, more young people even, to have that respect for the Fantastic Four as well, and just be able to be like, these characters are cool, they're fun, they're fascinating. I want to enjoy them the way other people have before. So I implore you, spend some more time with Fantastic Four and get to know these characters, because you're going to enjoy them. They're just so unique and fun, and they're a family. And you know what's more important than family? I don't know. Maybe there's probably something, depending on who you are, but family is a very important thing. And I love that the Fantastic Four explores that idea in a great creative way that's very Shakespearean in its own regard. So, those are my thoughts on the Fantastic Four right now. Like I said, please go read some of the books. Please go watch those old movies and just understand that you shouldn't do that to Susan Storm, because she's not that kind of character. So I always like to end things with a couple of recommendations for you guys, stuff to check out. And like, of course, these are all going to be Fantastic Four themed. So like I said, please check out the current books going on at Marvel Comics. You have Dan Slott writing Fantastic Four. It's fun, it's schlucky, it's the most Fantastic Four comic of modern times, I think. And go check out Christopher Cantwell's Doctor Doom. It is a masterclass in storytelling. Watch the Doomed documentary. I do believe it's on Amazon Video right now. It's going to tell you the story of the 1994 Roger Corman Fantastic Four movie, and it's very fascinating to see. Please read Hickman's run on Fantastic Four. It's big, it's bulky, it's different, it's weird. The Kirby and Lee version of Fantastic Four, which is the original run, it's fantastic, and you're going to enjoy it. And please just know that Krasinski and Blunt should not be these characters. So thank you guys so much for watching or listening to this episode of the GeekWave. Be sure to like and subscribe to the channel, and if you're listening to it on the podcast feed, please give us a rating whether or not you liked it or not. I'm very curious to see what you people think. As always, you can check me out on Instagram, Patreon, Twitter, all that good stuff, and I'll catch you in the next one. Have fun, stay safe, good luck.